Do you know what humans used to do every single night for centuries? They would go to sleep, wake up in the middle of the night, stay awake for an hour or two, and then go back to sleep again. Not because they had insomnia, not because something was wrong, but because that was considered completely normal. In fact, people even had names for these two sleeps: first sleep and second sleep. So, how did an entire sleep pattern disappear? And what does that tell us about the way humans were actually meant to sleep? To answer that, we need to travel back to a world that no longer exists. A world before electricity, before streetlights, before glowing screens, before human conquered the night. Tonight, millions of people will wake up at 2 am. They'll check the time and immediately start worrying. Why am I awake? Why can't I sleep? Is something wrong with me? But what if waking up in the middle of the night isn't a malfunction? What if it's a memory? Because for most of human history, sleeping through the entire night wasn't normal. In fact, your ancestors often slept in two separate shifts. They call them first sleep and second sleep. And the strange hour between them may be one of the most forgotten parts of being human. Imagine the world before electricity, not before smartphones, not before television, before light itself. The sun disappears below the horizon. Within minutes, the landscape transforms. No street lights, no car headlights, no glowing windows, no phone screens, just darkness. The kind of darkness most people alive today have never experienced. A darkness so complete that you could lose sight of your own hand. For more than 300,000 years, this was normal. Half of every human life was spent in darkness, and that darkness shaped the way humans slept. Because before the artificial light, people simply went to bed much, much, much earlier, especially during the winter. There wasn't much else to do, and when darkness lasts 12, 13, or even 14 hours, sleeping all the way through becomes surprisingly very, very difficult. That's where the mystery begins. In the late 1990s, historian Roger Ekirch was studying old documents, nothing unusual: court records, personal letters, medical texts, religious writings, diaries. But he kept noticing something strange. People repeatedly mentioned something called first sleep and second sleep. At first, it seemed insignificant. Then it kept appearing again and again and again. Eventually, Ekirch found hundreds of references spanning centuries. People casually described waking up after their first sleep, praying between sleeps, visiting neighbors between sleeps, thinking between sleeps, then returning to bed for the second sleep. Nobody explained what these terms meant because everyone already knew it was completely normal. Like for today, what is breakfast or lunch? And that's when Ekirch realized something remarkable. For much of history, humans did not treat sleep as one continuous event. They treated it as two separate events. But here's the fascinating part: what happened during the gap? People didn't panic, they didn't stare at ceilings wondering if they had insomnia. Many saw this period as valuable. Some prayed, some reflected, some discussed dreams, some simply sat quietly. Historical records describe a calm state of wakefulness. Not fully asleep, not fully alert. Some physicians even believed this was the best time for contemplation, a period when the world was silent. No cards, no crowds, no work, no noise, just darkness and thought. Imagine that. An entire phase of life devoted to reflection. No notifications, no emails, no endless scrolling, just your mind. For centuries, historians thought these references were strange curiosities. Then science accidentally stumbled into the same discovery. In the early 1990s, psychiatrist Thomas Wehr conducted an unusual experiment. Participants were removed from modern lighting. Instead of the artificial schedules we live under today, they experienced long period of darkness, roughly what humans would have encountered before modern electric lighting. At first, their sleep became chaotic. Then something unexpected happened. Their bodies settled into a rhythm: 4 hours of sleep, a period of quiet wakefulness, then another 4 hours of sleep. Nobody instructed them to do this. Nobody taught them. The pattern simply emerged, as if it had been waiting beneath modern life all along. Even more intriguing, participants often describe the wakeful period as peaceful, almost meditative, not stressful, not frustrating, just peace and calm. So you must be wondering, if this pattern was so common, where did it go? The answer is surprisingly very simple. Light. First came candles, then oil lamps, then gas lamps, then electric light. For the first time in history, darkness no longer controlled the human schedules. Cities stayed awake, business stayed open, entertainment moved into the light. The evening grew longer, bedtimes moved later, but wake up times didn't move much. Work still started in the morning, school still started in the morning. Slowly, sleep compressed into a single block. Within a few generations, something that may have existed for centuries largely disappeared, and most people forget it ever existed. Now, this does not mean everyone should sleep in two phases. Modern sleep science still generally recommends getting enough total sleep and maintaining a consistent schedule. But history does reveal something important. Waking up in the middle of the night isn't automatically unnatural. Humans have done it before, possibly for a very long time. The problem isn't waking up unnecessarily. The problem may be what happens next. Today, when people wake up at 2 a.m., they don't sit quietly. They grab a phone, they grab their laptops, they watch movies, series, they check messages, read emails, scroll social media, expose themselves to the bright light, and suddenly the brain thinks, okay, morning has arrived. The experience becomes stressful, not reflective. Tonight, if you wake up in the darkness, consider this. Thousands of generations of your ancestors may have done the exactly same thing. Not because they were sick, not because they were broken, but because that was simply how the night worked. For them, sleep wasn't a straight line, it was a rhythm, a conversation between consciousness and darkness, a forgotten pattern hidden beneath modern life. And perhaps the strange part is this: the next time you wake up at 2 a.m., you might not be experiencing something new, you might be experiencing something very ancient.
वीडियोस बनाने हैं फिल्मोरा है ना।